Excellencies, colleagues, good afternoon. May I kindly ask everyone to take their seats as we are about to begin. I now call to order the fourth meeting of the 18th session of the Conference of State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We will resume our consideration of Agenda Item 5A. The first hour of this meeting will be dedicated to hearing statements from delegations as part of the general debate. It is now my pleasure to invite the first speaker of the afternoon, Young Adult Institute CanCrest Services, speaking from the NGO seat. Microphone for Young Adult Institute CanCrest Services, NGO seat, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I just couldn't hear you back here. My name is Marianne McAvoy, Associate Vice President of Business Development at CanCrest Services. I'm honored to be here today, joined by my colleague and incoming CEO, Aurora Crippa, to support the ongoing implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Although the United States has not yet ratified the CRPD, we at CanCrest remain committed advocates for its adoption. Our participation at COSP18 in partnership with the Young Adult Institute reflects our deep belief in the importance of global collaboration and advocacy for disability rights. CanCrest has a proud 120-year history of promoting inclusion, dignity, and respect for all individuals, regardless of ability. Founded in 1905 in Philadelphia during a time of great public health need, we've grown into one of the largest providers of disability services across Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Delaware. Our mission has always been centered on the belief that communities thrive when they embrace diversity in all its forms, whether age, religion, gender, or ability. As we look to the future, we remain steadfast in our commitment to amplifying the voices of individuals with disabilities and celebrating their contributions. Personally, I bring to this work not only professional experience, but also a deep personal connection as a parent of a child with autism. This journey has further strengthened my resolve to advocate for inclusive policies and practices. While we acknowledge the challenges that remain, including the absence of U.S. ratification of the CRPD and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, we do remain hopeful. We believe in the power of dialogue, partnership, and persistent advocacy can bring to meaningful change. Thank you for welcoming us into this conversation. We are proud to stand with you in advancing the rights and inclusion of all people, and will continue to be a strong voice for progress in the United States. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Young Adult Institute CanCrest Services for her statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Burkina Faso.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, Burkina Faso is pleased to participate in the 18th session of the Conference of the State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is being held a few months prior to the Second World Summit on Social Development. President, Burkina Faso ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities on the 23rd of July 2009 and is steadfastly committed to guaranteeing the full exercise of the rights of these people who all too often remain marginalized from development dynamics in a context overshadowed by multidimensional challenges, security, humanitarian, climate, and socioeconomic challenges, which greatly affect the most vulnerable, including persons with disabilities. Burkina Faso is pursuing its efforts to include and empower them. Thus, the central theme of this session is in consistency with the vision of my country, which is committed to implementing specific measurable actions around 5 strategic goals. First, Burkina Faso intends to complete the ratification of the protocol to the African Charter of Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and to review the relevant national law on protection and promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities to further come into line with international standards. In the terms of physical and digital accessibility, my country will use resources, will ensure that we can deliver rights to universal accessibility by adopting and implementing a decree to implement the law on accessibility, integration and accessibility standards in our urban planning and public procurement spheres, and to create multimedia centres which are inclusive and equipped with adapted technologies. In the field of inclusive education, our objective is to increase by 30% the schooling rate of children with disabilities beyond 2030, including by constructing adapted schools, strengthening capacities of teaching staff, and providing didactic materials which are helping persons with disabilities. That we also have targeted financial support. In the context of the economic and the, empowerment and professional inclusion, we have the goal of extra 5,000 persons with disabilities entering the socio-economic fabric of our country between now and 2030, thanks to professional training. Finally, in terms of social protection, access to healthcare, universal free health coverage will be extended to persons with disabilities in at least 80% of structures between now and 2030. In addition, the Charter for the Inclusion of Disabilities in Humanitarian Action, signed on the 31st of August 2033, is disseminated and implemented to strengthen protection for persons with disabilities who have been displaced. Present. This implementation is subject to rigorous follow-up and adaptation involving persons with disabilities organisations. I'd like to conclude by expressing my recognition to the delegation partners. The speaker's microphone is cut off.
Of Portugal.
Madam President, Portugal reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the full implementation of the CRPD, grounded in a human rights-based approach and aligned with the 2030 Agenda. Public awareness of the rights and contributions of persons with disabilities is a moral, social, and political imperative. Their inclusion is a condition of progress and not a concession. In Portugal, we have been adopting policies that recognize persons with disabilities as rights holders and full participants in all aspects of society. Our efforts are also rooted in our national strategy for the inclusion of persons with disabilities 2021-2025, which was developed in line with the CRPD. We welcome the role of inclusive support services in enabling autonomy for persons with disabilities. Notable examples in Portugal include the Independent Living Support Model. This provides personal assistance to promote independent living, and the National Health System 24 video call system, offering 24/7 access to healthcare for deaf persons through free real-time Portuguese Sign Language interpretation. We also value inclusive early childhood policies through the National System of Early Childhood Intervention, which ensures that children with disabilities are supported in their development and social participation from the earliest stages of life through coordinated action across health, education, and social sectors. The rights of persons with disabilities are cross-cutting in all policies. As an example, we also implemented an inclusive crisis response through the Strategy for Preventive Civil Protection, which promotes the active involvement of persons with disabilities in shaping emergency planning. Also, particularly noteworthy is the 2024 expansion of the 2019 Informal Caregiver Statute, which extended support to non-family caregivers such as friends and neighbors. Portugal also expanded community-based mental health services and promoted the transition from institutional care to integrated support models in line with CRPD and WHO guidance. Finally, a note on artificial intelligence, which represents an historic opportunity to break down barriers, so the active participation of persons with disabilities in the design of these technologies is essential. To conclude, Portugal believes in intersectional approaches that integrate disability rights with broader human rights priorities, including inclusive education and the advancement of human rights. We can only advance the CRPD's transformative vision through inclusion, solidarity, equal access to rights and opportunities, so that we can build a world where diversity is not only valued, but also celebrated. Thank you.
I thank Portugal for their statement, and now I give the floor to the delegation of Maldives.
Thank you, President. I thank the President and the Bureau for their work in leading this session. The Maldives firmly believes that development can only be sustained through creating a compassionate society, one that embraces and empowers people with different abilities and needs. This is why the Maldives ratified CRPD, mainstreamed disability-focused into legislation and policies through law, and formulated a strategic 5-year national plan to address key issues faced by persons with disabilities. The challenge is ensuring its implementation so that it positively impacts the lives of all Maldivians. The Maldives government is working to remove barriers and create ways in which persons with disabilities can be supported to participate at all levels of society. This includes persons with disabilities occupying leadership and decision-making positions in developing successful development policies and programs. The Maldives is strengthening inclusivity by training all civil servants in sign language for better communication with hearing-impaired communities and providing screen reading software in the national language Divehi for individuals with visual impairment. The Maldives is committed to support families with children and disabilities through enhanced early identification of delayed development milestones, financial assistance for therapies, and dedicated housing units for families with children with disabilities. Disability allowance and eased access to assistive devices, healthcare, housing, and financial services are being prioritized and provided. The Maldives understands that building an empowered, inclusive, and compassionate society requires multi-sectoral and consistent effort. We do recognize, however, that society is only as advanced as its most vulnerable members and remain steadfast in our commitment to leave no one behind. I thank you.
I thank the Maldives for their statement, and now I give the floor to the delegation of Austria.
Madam Vice President, Austria aligns itself with the statements made on behalf of the European Union and the Group of Friends of Persons with Disabilities. Austria is continuing its efforts towards the full implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, as well as the recommendations provided by the CRPD Committee in its concluding observations following the second state review in 2023. A key priority for Austria is to ensure the meaningful and informed participation of persons with disabilities and their organizations in all policy-making processes. This commitment has been fulfilled during the development of the National Action Plan on Disability 2022 to 2030, the national strategy for the implementation of the CRPD. Organizations of persons with disabilities and civil society organizations were actively involved in drafting the action plan and are involved in its implementation and evaluation. Madam Vice President, Austria recognizes the importance of working against harmful stereotypes and stigmas towards persons with disabilities, especially those with psychosocial disabilities. Therefore, a working group, including organizations of persons with psychosocial disabilities, has developed a catalogue of recommendations to combat the stigmatization and raise awareness for the importance of psychological health. Ensuring effective communication support is fundamental to ensure the participation of persons who are deaf or hard of hearing in society. Austria has developed a funding directive totaling 4 million euros to support projects aimed at training sign language interpreters as well as sign language course instructors and to facilitate the access to interpreting services. In the area of employment, it is essential that persons with disabilities can participate in work on an equal basis with others. Starting this year, all Austrian companies with more than 400 employees are required to appoint accessibility officers. Finally, in the area of development cooperation, the mainstreaming of inclusion and special inclusion goals continues. Particular emphasis is placed on persons with multiple disabilities in fragile contexts and the promotion of youth with disabilities. Austria also places a special focus on dialogue with civil society. Madam Vice President, lastly, I would like to highlight an important labor inclusion initiative. Austria has developed a funding directive to support projects aimed at including persons with high support needs in the labor market. The federal government has provided additional 36 million euros to support these projects, which ensure fair wages, employment, and social insurance coverage, as well as pensions for participating individuals. Let me finish by re-emphasizing our steadfast commitment to the full implementation of the Convention for and with persons with disabilities, and I thank you.
I thank Austria for their statement, and now I give the floor to the representative of Inclusion International, speaking from the NGO seat.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Luke Nelson from Australia. I am a person with an intellectual disability. I have had a disability.
Distinguished delegate, ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago in Copenhagen, the World Summit for Social...
the national peak body representing the rights of people with an intellectual disability and their families. Inclusion Australia is a member of Inclusion International. I want to talk today about using AI as a tool for supporting inclusion and to strengthen the participation of people with an intellectual disability. AI can sometimes be helpful. It can make things faster or stop simple mistakes. But most AI systems are not designed for people with intellectual disabilities in mind. This can cause harm. It is about human rights. People with disabilities have the right to equal access to public services, including information and digital systems. This is a right in the CRPD. It also says information should be easy to understand. This includes easy read information, accessible digital tools. We need to make sure AI systems are built with people with intellectual disabilities in mind. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Inclusion International, and now I give the floor to the delegation of Jordan.
السيد الرئيس الحضور الكرام أتحدث اليوم.
President, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm addressing you to talk about Jordan's efforts under the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We grant special attention to disability matters. In our country, we dedicate 1% of our budget to programs for the assistance of persons with disabilities. President, we have created a Supreme Council of Persons with Disabilities. This is an important step towards inclusion and integration of this population. Since the creation of this council, it has strived to implement national policies to deliver inclusion for persons with disabilities. President, as I'm sure you're aware, Jordan has hosted, alongside Germany, the International Coalition for Disabilities, a global summit on the subject of disabilities. His Majesty the King expressed his fully fledged support for persons with disabilities and highlighted Jordan's position and the efforts it has made to meet all of our obligations. We deplore what is currently occurring in the Gaza Strip. A number of children who have fallen has reached record figures, and humanitarian aid problems further complicate the lives of the population, particularly those with disabilities. President, we've made 133 commitments in the context of the Global Summit on Disability, and we'd like to thank Germany and the World Alliance for Disability for the efforts they made, allowing us to make a success of that summit. President, we adopted the Amman-Berlin Declaration to strengthen the rights of persons with disabilities. We call upon all states parties to adopt that declaration. We're ready to provide technical support so that that can happen. Thank you.
And now I give the floor to the delegation of Greece.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greece aligns itself with the EU statement and reaffirms its strong and enduring commitment to the full implementation of the CRPD. In recent years, Greece has adopted a structured, strategic approach to disability policy, delivering tangible results through integrated and evidence-based initiatives. Its efforts are aligned with the European Strategy for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2021 to 2030, as well as with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Our first National Action Plan on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2020 to 2023 provided an integrated policy framework for addressing the multidimensional needs of persons with disabilities, covering accessibility, education, employment, healthcare, and independent living. The action plan adopted a human rights-based approach consistent with the CRPD and relevant EU frameworks, while also reinforcing governance capacity, interinstitutional coordination, and public awareness. Building on the results of this action plan, Greece has adopted the National Strategy on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2024-2030, Greece with everyone, for everyone. The strategy has developed under the leadership of the Minister of State responsible for disability issues through an inclusive and participatory process involving public authorities, representative organizations of persons with disabilities, the National Accessibility Authority, and a broad range of stakeholders. The public consultation process was fully accessible and ensured the meaningful participation of all interested parties. The strategy is structured around 7 strategic pillars: universal accessibility, independent living and community-based services, access to quality healthcare services, inclusive education at all levels, equal access to quality employment, visibility and awareness raising, and support to families of persons with disabilities. The strategy includes 154 targeted policy measures, each of which has clear indicators and implementation timelines, fully integrated into the operational planning of ministries. A cross-sectorial coordination mechanism on the rights of persons with disabilities has been established under the supervision of the Minister of State to ensure coherent implementation and monitoring. During the first year of strategy's implementation, there is already a plethora of significant milestones that have been reached. Looking ahead, emphasis will...
I thank Greece for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Georgia addressing the conference via a video message. I would like to kindly ask the Secretariat to play a video.
Distinguished delegate, ladies and gentlemen, 30 years ago in Copenhagen, the World Summit for Social Development united 186 nations around a shared vision to eradicate poverty, achieve full employment, and promote social integration. Although the CRPD had yet to be adopted, that summit laid a foundation for the inclusion of vulnerable groups, especially persons with disabilities. I welcome the 18th session CRPD COSP and its recognition of the oncoming Second World Social Summit, which represents a unique opportunity to advance social development as well as to strengthen the role of the persons with disabilities and enhance their inclusion in joint endeavors. As we celebrate progress, we must also confront the remaining gaps, because real development begins only when people see themselves in the future. We are building on our journey of translating the achievement of the Summit of the Future into tangible progress. The effective implementation of the pact, which notably includes many references to the rights of persons with disabilities, is of critical importance. Yet technology alone is not enough. Public consciousness is the foundation of equality. In this spirit, I highlight the Paralympic movement, a living expression of human strength and dignity. Years after years, our para-athletes break records, become champions, and inspire positive change in others' lives. The heroic participation of Georgian para-athletes in Paris 2024 and the live broadcasting spark a mental revolution in public attitudes in Georgia. However, as we celebrate this achievement, we cannot ignore the stark realities that persist. 20% of Georgian territory remains under occupation by the Russia Federation. Their persons with disabilities face systemic exclusion. Their lives remain untouched by the progress we celebrate here today. My voice carries the dignity of those living beyond the occupation line. Artificial intelligence, the Paralympic spirit, and human rights protection are not separate endeavors. They are a shared path toward freedom, inclusion, dignity, and equality. Georgia's coat of arms reads, "Strength is in unity." Let us unite around shared values. When every person feels seen and supported, we will achieve true social security. Thank you.
I thank Georgia for their statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished minister from Libya. Excellency, you have the floor.
May the peace, blessings, and mercy of God be upon you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to make this statement during these deliberations to reiterate that the empowerment of persons with disabilities in my country, Libya, is no option. It is a national necessity amidst our vision to establish a more equitable society. Since our ratification of the CRPD and under the patronage of Abdelhamid Dbeiba, we've given great importance to the empowerment of persons with disabilities in educational and healthcare projects. We've increased our coordination in this regard to pursue efforts to uphold the rights of persons with disabilities through reforms. Chief amongst those efforts were the establishment of a national framework for the accessibility to public facilities for persons with disabilities, including the increase of benefits for persons with disabilities by 100%, including services for psychosocial support and rehabilitation. Including the provision of quota for persons with disabilities and municipalities for their to ensure their administrative participation. This also includes their inclusion in education as well as vocational training. In addition, we've adopted the National Strategy for Social Protection as a chief framework to ensure equitability and equal access to opportunities. We've also ensured the targeting of beneficiaries as well as the assessment of disability and the establishment of a registry in accordance with national criteria. In our Tripoli, in the Declaration of Tripoli, as well as during the Summit of Berlin, we've committed to a new roadmap that ensures the enhancement of our policies to increase the inclusion of persons with disabilities and the strengthening of our partnerships worldwide. In Libya, and despite the various challenges, we believe that justice can only be served if all rights are fulfilled without any discrimination. Based on the aforementioned, we reiterate our commitment to the CRPD and we call for active transfer of knowledge among states so that we can build our capacities and build services and policies that can pave the way for an inclusive and just society. And may the peace and blessings of God be upon you.
Thank the distinguished Minister of Social Affairs of Libya for her statement. And I now give the floor to the delegation of Algeria.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. It gives us great pleasure to deliver this statement during the 18th session of the Conference of State Parties to the CRPD. We take this opportunity to reiterate Algeria's steadfast commitment to the implementation of its provisions and the upholding of rights of persons with disabilities at the national and international level. To fulfill our international commitments, we have awarded great importance to the empowerment of persons with disabilities and their inclusion in all walks of life in accordance with the principle of leaving no one behind, which constitutes a cornerstone for the SDGs. At the education level, we have worked on increasing educational inclusion through the widening of the scope of our national network of specialized educational institutions and the establishment of special departments in public schools. In the school year 2024-2025, we have established 239 specialized institutions and 19 inclusive facilities. 1,304 inclusive departments were established, benefiting more than 35,000 children with disability. As for economic empowerment, we have established a program for the enablement of inclusive small enterprises through the Microfinance Agency, to encourage entrepreneurship and increase financial and economic independence. In this regard, since 2021, more than 1,500 inclusive professional projects were established. We have also adopted a minimum quota of 1% for workers with disabilities, as employers are compelled to meet this quota, and if not, they are compelled to pay a financial contribution to the budget of the Treasury, and these funds are then channeled for projects for professional inclusion in regular jobs and jobs allocated to persons with disabilities. We've also enacted Law 125 on the 20th of February 2025, providing for rules and principles for the protection of persons with disabilities, as well as the establishment of tangible mechanisms for full inclusion of persons with disabilities and their access to housing, transportation, employment, and services. Madam Vice President, despite the progress made, challenges remain, namely in armed conflicts and crises where persons with disabilities are deprived from their rights. We thereby express our utmost concern vis-à-vis the tragic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. Reports have pointed out a spike in thousands of cases of new disability due to the ongoing aggression against the Gaza Strip. Various children amputees have been recently established with the collapse of rehabilitation institutions. Thank you.
Of Latvia.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Excellencies, it is my honor to address you today at the Conference of State Parties to the CRPD. Latvia aligns itself with a statement by the European Union. The latest data show encouraging but still fragile momentum. More states are embedding accessibility standards, strengthening disability rights legislation, and closing data gaps that once masked exclusion. Yet, scarcely 1 in 6 disability-related SDG indicators is on track. Most have stalled or even slid backwards. Building on that global snapshot, Latvia has set clear and targeted measures for the inclusion of persons with disabilities in society. Let me illustrate it with the 2 concrete measures that are in line with principles of the CRPD. First, the introduction of a new social service for people with mental disabilities, a support person in decision-making, with the aim of strengthening the ability of people with mental disabilities to live independently in society and make independent decisions. Second, strengthening the requirements for accessibility of the environment, services, and information, highlighting accessibility as one of the basic conditions for independent living. There is always room for improvement. That's why we are here, to share and learn about the best practices and ensure full equality of rights and opportunities for persons with disabilities. Madam Chair, progress, however, can be wiped away overnight when war erupts. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has created tens of thousands of new disabilities and displaced many more persons already living with impairments. Patterns we also witness in Gaza, Sudan, and elsewhere. Latvia has responded by recognizing Ukrainian disability documentation for immediate access to services, offering accessible housing, providing mobility aids, and psychological support. As a newly elected member of the UN Security Council, Latvia will champion the full implementation of Resolution 2475 and work towards ensure that disability inclusion becomes standard practice in protection mandates, humanitarian carve-outs, and ceasefire monitoring. We will press for systematic data on disability in UN field briefings because what is not measured is too easily ignored. In closing, Latvia stands ready to collaborate, innovate, and be held to account so that persons with disabilities in peace and in war can exercise their full rights and shape our common future. I thank you.
I thank Latvia for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Jamaica.
Exit.
Microphone for Jamaica, please.
It's on. Oh. Excellencies, Jamaica remains committed to the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and freedoms by persons with disabilities. This commitment is grounded in our Disabilities Act to protect the rights of persons with disabilities and the Disabilities Rights Tribunal, which now provides access to justice to those who have faced discrimination because of their disability. The government of Jamaica assiduously works to provide persons with disabilities full access to the fundamental rights in the CRPD. Implementation is spearheaded by the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities under the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. Over the past year, Jamaica invested in providing economic empowerment grants and assistive devices, including through New Limb, New Life project, tools that transform lives, unlock mobility, foster independence, and open doors to education, vocational training, and access to employment. This year, the government increased budgetary support to expand vital programs, increase access to quality social services, financial support, public education, early stimulation services, research, and other initiatives. We will continue our commitment to supporting persons with disabilities through meaningful and practical interventions. Jamaica is investing in digital inclusion to break barriers of access. Later this month, the digital platform, including the I Am Able mobile application developed in partnership with UNICEF, will be launched. The app will allow persons to register with the JCPD and access essential services from their mobile phones. The app will be supported by a national education campaign under the I Am Able initiative, which highlights the invaluable contributions of persons with disabilities and to promote a rights-based approach to inclusion. To further strengthen data and service delivery, Jamaica will undertake a national census of persons with disabilities to generate accurate and disaggregated data to inform effective evidence-based policies and programs. An accessibility checklist was introduced in December 2023 to identify and remove barriers encountered by persons with disabilities in public spaces. Access audits are ongoing to assess compliance and raise standards for inclusion. Jamaica has strengthened early warning systems and trained shelter managers to better respond to the needs of these persons who live in disaster-prone areas. Jamaica is building a society where persons with disabilities are fully recognized, supported, and empowered to thrive. Through continued collaboration, we will work together to advance the goals of the CRPD, promote a more inclusive world for all, leaving no one behind. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank Jamaica for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Bulgaria.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to start by congratulating you and the Bureau on the excellent stewardship of the conference. You can count on Bulgaria's continued support. Bulgaria aligns itself with the statement made by the European Union and the group of friends of persons with disabilities, and I would like to add a few points in my national capacity. Bulgaria remains committed to promoting comprehensive policies in employment, accessibility, education, and social inclusion, and welcomes this year's focus on enhancing public awareness of the rights and contributions of persons with disabilities, especially in the context of the preparation of the Second World Social Summit. Having ratified CRPD in 2012, Bulgaria systematically works towards building an inclusive society, ensuring that persons with disabilities can lead independent lives and participate on equal footing with others. The law on persons with disabilities, in force since 2019, establishes individualized support mechanisms across sectors like healthcare, education, employment, transportation, culture, sports, as well as in politics. Bulgaria prioritizes labor market access, promoting employment opportunities through financial incentives, workplace adaptation, and accessibility measures. The Agency for Persons with Disabilities funds employers to create inclusive workplaces with the National Program for Employment and Professional Development and supports specialized enterprises fostering economic independence and sustainability. Additionally, Bulgaria is investing in expanding training programs for persons with disabilities and strengthening partnerships with employers. Quota-based hiring policies ensure that organizations recruit individuals with disabilities and promote state-backed opportunities for people with disabilities. Ensuring equal access to education is a priority for Bulgaria. Regional centers support children with disabilities in schools, while universities provide adaptive environments, teaching aids, and personalized learning to enhance accessibility. Infrastructure plays a crucial role in inclusion. Since 2019, the National Programme for Accessible Living Environment and Personal Mobility has enhanced urban accessibility and transport adaptation to ensure safe and independent mobility for persons with disabilities. In conclusion, Bulgaria reaffirms its unwavering commitment to ensuring that persons with disabilities fully realize their potential and contribute to social progress in a society where inclusion is not just a principle but a lived reality. Thank you.
I thank Bulgaria for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of the Russian Federation.
Madam President, good afternoon. Thank you very much. The Russian Federation ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 13 years ago. The integration of persons with disabilities into society and ensuring accessibility in all areas of life continues to be one of the main tasks of our country's social policy. Systemic legislative requirements to create a barrier-free environment for persons with disabilities are determined at the federal, regional and municipal levels. We are continuing to improve our legislation in accordance with specific provisions of the Convention, and we are trying to change social stereotypes relating to persons with disabilities. The Russian Federation pays constant attention to issues of awareness among the population of the rights and contributions of persons with disabilities to the development of society. To that end, we have created a web portal called Living Together that contains up-to-date information about accessibility for persons with disabilities and their rights. Associations of persons with disabilities and other non-profits are given regular state support, including subsidies to partially cover the expenses of their activities. Moreover, there is a program of subsidies for employers that hire persons with disabilities, and they are also supported in creating new jobs. There are also measures for the digital transformation of the educational environment of vocational education. An experimental federal platform has been created for persons with disabilities that are studying called the Pro League. It helps to match the level of professional training of graduates with disabilities with the requirements of the labour market. Thanks to the creation of the single centralized digital platform in the social sphere, most federal measures of support for persons with disabilities, including pensions and social payments, are provided proactively and do not have to be applied for. We are also continuing to implement the plan for the development in the Russian Federation of a system of comprehensive rehabilitation. The outcomes of these changes to the legislation will mean that on the 1st of January 2030, all rehabilitation organizations will provide services according to common standards, and they will also allow for the digitalization of the entire sphere of rehabilitation. We pay particular attention to ensuring that persons with disabilities have rehabilitation means, and these are provided free of charge in accordance with individual rehabilitation and habilitation programs, and the list of these programs is constantly growing. This allows us to provide a targeted set of the necessary requirements and means and equipment based on the individual requirements of the person. We are expanding the application of the 22-1-1 system for electronic certificates for the application of these rehabilitation resources. We understand the scale and the multifaceted nature of the problems. The Russian Federation continues to improve its legislation in accordance with the Convention, is combating social stereotypes in respect of persons with disabilities. Our country stands ready to study the experience of other countries, because it's only by working together that we can make the lives of persons with disabilities fully fledged lives and comfortable ones. Thank you.
Federation for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Morocco.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, allow me on behalf of the Kingdom of Morocco to express my great pleasure and pride to be participating with you in the 18th session of the Conference of State Parties to the CRPD under this very important topic. This important topic highlights the importance attached to the empowerment and full citizenship of persons with disabilities. It reflects a commitment to building a just society where no one is left behind. Our participation in this very important event reflects our commitment to upholding the rights of persons with disabilities in particular. We are keen on continuing our collaboration with relevant United Nations mechanisms, considering the importance attached to various policies and programs implemented in the Kingdom. We participated in the Berlin conference, and in this regard, we continue to highlight the importance of multilateralism and the allocation of necessary resources, as well as assistive technologies to assist persons with disabilities in their inclusion. And in accordance with the directives of His Majesty Mohammed VI, we have continued to increase social protection provided to persons with disabilities to improve the living conditions of persons with disabilities. Our commitment to the upholding of these rights is provided for in the Constitution. This Constitution provides for equality and rights and obligations. In accordance with our national legislation 9716, and we've adopted our action plan for the inclusion of persons with disabilities 2015-2025 to ensure economic empowerment, social inclusion, equality, as well as innovation. In accordance with Article 23 of this strategy, a card for persons with disabilities has been established in January in order to allow for benefits to be provided to persons with disabilities based on their needs. The Kingdom of Morocco, on the 21st of May 2025, launched the first awareness-raising campaign during that month in order to ensure that awareness is increased on the rights and contributions of persons with disabilities. We've also established a fund for social inclusion in partnership with NGOs. And this fund has benefited more than 1.5 million persons with disabilities. We've also adopted a quota of 7% for persons with disabilities. Microphone was cut off.
And I now give the floor to the delegation of Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Indonesia congratulates you and the Bureau for successfully organizing this conference. Rest assured of Indonesia's active contribution throughout our deliberation. Madam Vice President, today we face a sobering reality. Across developing countries, 90% of children with disabilities do not attend school. In developed countries, persons with disabilities still lag by 15 years in fundamental skills and understanding. Furthermore, stigma continues to fuel high unemployment rate among persons with disabilities, reaching up to 80% in some countries. These are stark reminders that we must multiply our efforts. A world that sidelines persons with disabilities breaks the promise of leaving no one behind. In this regard, Indonesia wishes to underline 3 key points. First, we must shift the paradigm. Empowering persons with disabilities must no longer be done with charity approach. At the heart of this shift is the meaningful involvement of persons with disabilities in policy design, implementation, and evaluation. Only through this approach, persons with disabilities can fully enjoy and contribute to social development. Second, we must leverage multi-stakeholders partnership and innovation. Collaboration across sectors, public, private, academia, and others, combined with innovations such as technology and inclusive business models, is key catalyst for positive changes. Indonesia offers a clear example. Through digital transformation and supportive business climate, in 2024, over 52% of persons with disabilities of productive age in Indonesia contributed to the economy as entrepreneurs. Lastly, we align CRPD with the 2030 agenda and look beyond 2030. With 5 years remaining, the implementation of CRPD must support the implementation and acceleration of the SDGs. At the same time, lesson learned CRPD must be used to inform the planning of post-2030 agenda. The Pact of the Future provides a clear mandate to ensure full and equal empowerment of persons with disabilities now and for future generations. Therefore, it is timely for us to integrate CRPD into global development agenda beyond 2030. To conclude, Madam Vice President, I wish to reaffirm Indonesia's steadfast commitment to the right of persons with disabilities and building a future where no one is left behind. I thank you.
I thank Indonesia for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Romania.
Thank you, Chair. Persons with disabilities are an important part of the society, and the communities in which they live should value them for their contribution to its shared values. Due to stigma, reduced accessibility, and marginalization, we see and encounter only a few of them every day. Thus, if their rights, including the right to work, to decent work, are promoted, they can contribute significantly to the country's economy. Limited access to jobs leads to a high risk of social exclusion and poverty. The right to work is an inherent part of human rights, and its exercise must be universal. Persons with disabilities could develop their inner capacities and bring added value to their communities. Their employment should be seen as a wise business choice rather than an act of charity. For them, living in the community, free access to education and to labor market is the only prerequisite for ensuring a decent standard of living and growing self-esteem. All these measures can be put into practice by changing the paradigm from passive actors in the community's life to active actors who can bring plus added value. In this context, the role of media in supporting the independent life of people with disabilities can be decisive in shaping a realistic, positive, and motivational image. Romania strongly believes that the promoting an objective image could lead to an increase of the quality of the life for these persons. Thank you, Madam.
I thank Romania for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm honored today to speak on a matter that cuts to the heart of justice, dignity, and inclusive development. That's the right of persons with disability. In Antigua and Barbuda, we stand firm in the belief that every person, regardless of ability, has the right to life and live a full, empowered, and participatory life. This principle, Madam President, is enshrined in our Disability Act, a landmark piece of legislation that continues to guide our efforts. But my government recognizes that legislation alone is not enough. It must be matched with practical commitment, cultural changes, and investment across the entire lifespan of persons with disability. To this end, my government of Antigua and Barbuda, working with persons with disabilities, are working towards full implementation of the Act to reach the standards we set ourselves to achieve a full participatory life for all. Our efforts are focused, they are deliberate, and to reach all across the life spectrum from childhood to seniors, to ensure inclusive empowerment and opportunities are available. Madam Chair, from early childhood, we are working to ensure inclusive education environments that respect dignity and provides appropriate support. Children with disability, we believe, deserve to begin life with the same promise as any other child, and therefore access to learning is important, access to play, and development opportunities for support. This is not only care, it is an investment in our future for our island, an investment in our youth, and an investment in our workers. We are expanding teacher training and integrated accessible learning with materials appropriate and training that is equally appropriate. In this area in the area of employment, we are proud to say that many persons with disabilities are serving in the public service, not simply to make up quotas. Many of these persons are leaders. Many are bringing technical skills and expertise into the service. These are not simply meeting quotas. It is a recognition that persons with disability brings talent, respect, and innovation to the workforce. We also, Madam President, highlight the achievements in vocational and skill-based training. Our programs that deals with aquaculture provides an opportunity for children and for persons with disability to provide support to development and learning skills in fishing and linking inclusion with food security, most important to us. Our goal is to expand opportunities to the private sector so that they too can employ persons with disability and provide appropriate support. But, Madam President, we also know that inclusion is not only about.
I thank Antigua and Barbuda for their statement, and I now give the floor to the delegation of Panama.
Excelencias.
President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Panama was one of the first countries to sign and ratify this convention in 2007. We did so fully mindful of its transformative character. Since then, our country has decided to go from commitments to action, guided by human rights approach, full inclusion of persons with disabilities, and the principle of substantive equality. We have designed concrete actions to build a more equitable society where persons with disabilities can blossom in their potential, respecting individual differences while leaving nobody behind. Panama has engaged in cross-cutting work, creating an equal opportunities office and regional sub-offices to have more active participation of persons with disabilities in political, economic, social, and cultural life. With a fiscal sustainability vision, we have created international alliances, including the Universal Access Plan, and we have also received support from the World Bank and the ONCE Association. We have worked across the UN. We are pleased to have plans for community and regional support. In Panama, we reiterate our commitment to inclusion as a right rather than an exception. President, allow me to now pass the floor to Juan Yolande, a young person, our institutional lead for this theme, who's come from Panama City to participate in this important meeting. For a few years now, we have been strengthening our public policies, approving standards, ensuring universal access, and opening up spaces for citizens' participation for persons with disabilities. Inclusion isn't just a legal target, it's a political and social goal, and Panama is embarking upon that path, and we will continue to make strides in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank Panama for their statement. And I now give the floor to the delegation of Guatemala, our last speaker for this segment of the general debate.
Gracias. Buenas tardes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'd like to warmly greet you on behalf of the Republic of Guatemala and greet all of you who are in this session of the convention, the meeting of states parties number 18. Our country has decided to put an end to marginalisation and exclusion, which for years has been faced by the community of persons with disabilities. We know that each action is a major challenge, and that's why we need to work for a fairer, more inclusive Guatemala. That is our pledge. In accordance with the concluding observations by the Committee of Experts, we can reaffirm that we are working to ensure that we have actions which meet the requirements of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. In our country, the majority of persons with disabilities are in the interior. We are working with community leaders and the organizations for and of persons with disabilities to create channels which connect the community and the state. Guatemala is a territory made up of 314 municipalities. At present, we have opened 139 municipal disability offices. We have also made sure that our institutions have active participation in national departmental development councils across the country. We have made progress in national normative frameworks in the field of disability, including the law for care of persons with disability. We also have ratified the Marrakesh Treaty, and we are currently working on a law recognizing the Guatemalan Sign Language, as well as a law for the psychosocial certification of persons with disabilities. This is currently being arranged. We also reaffirm our commitment to a disability policy which is genuinely inclusive for all men and women alike. This needs to have a human rights approach. We stress our commitment to further boost resilience and sustainability as key pillars for delivering the rights of persons with disabilities, so that we can have a full and inclusive society. And we are delivering the motto of the Convention of Persons with Disabilities, nothing about us without us, so that nobody's left behind. Thank you.
That was the final intervention in this afternoon's segment of the general debate. We will now suspend the general debate and move to round table 2. The general debate will resume during the first hour of tomorrow's morning meeting, beginning at 10 a.m. in this same room.